I want to bring in Jamil Jaffer, founder and executive director of the National Security Institute. He was the lead architect of the Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act, and Alex Vatanka, who is senior fellow at the Middle East Institute. Glad to have both of you here this evening as we are on the cusp of these peace talks. Alex, I mean, these talks, they're starting out on shaky ground, given what's happened in the last several days. You had Iran today demanding the United States hand over assets that they're blocked by the U.S., and Trump saying he's getting the military ready if it doesn't work out, as we just saw. Do the Iranians really want to work out a deal? Is that their goal here?
Laura, I think they wanted a deal from the very beginning of the war, but they weren't sure if the American side was serious about a diplomatic solution to this. As this war sort of progressed and they became more comfortable that the American president, Donald Trump, wants an end to this war, they became more comfortable moving in that direction. Otherwise, they wouldn't have sent such a senior Iranian delegation to Islamabad. And we have to remember, Laura, these people are coming out of hiding. They're taking a big risk showing up in Islamabad. To me, that suggests they are serious about at least trying to see if diplomacy might work.
Netanyahu is not going to be there. What impact is that going to have, given that, as I said, there is the issue of Lebanon?
The Iranian bottom line on Bibi Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, is simple. If the Americans feel they can have a deal with Iran, Washington will get Israel to back off in Lebanon and perhaps even elsewhere.
There's a lot of heated rhetoric that's going both ways. The president saying today the Iranians don't seem to realize they have no cards other than a short-term extortion of the world by using international waterways. The only reason they are alive today is to negotiate. Now, we've heard the idea of who has the cards with respect to Ukraine most recently. Is he right in his assessment, though, here?
Well, I think the Iranians would disagree. I think the Iranians would say they've got all the cards. They forced the president to the table. They forced this negotiation in Pakistan. They forced the world price of oil up and put the pressure on. That being said, both parties really want a deal to get done here. I agree with Alex that we want a deal here. The U.S. wants a deal to get oil prices down, get the economy back on track, end this conflict. The Iranians want to stop getting beat down, their navy, their missile fleets, their drone fleets. At the same time, the parties are far apart, right? The U.S. is talking about no nuclear enrichment. Iran says we've conceded nuclear enrichment. The U.S. says no support for terrorism. Iran says the axis of resistance will not be attacked again. These parties, I mean, you and I are recovering lawyers. There's no meeting of the minds on this deal, right? And so who knows if the ceasefire holds? It's not really happening in the sense that the Straits of Hormuz aren't really open today. And who knows if there's a deal to be had in 2 weeks? What's clear, though, is both parties want a deal. The question is there any real deal space to be had?
A real sticking point, Strait of Hormuz, and whether it's reopening or not. Just as recently as yesterday, everyone was talking about the ultimate leverage of being able to control, even if not physically, that strait, and that benefiting Iran. But then there's New York Times reporting that U.S. officials believe that Iran can't open Strait of Hormuz because it can't locate all the mines that it laid in the water and doesn't have the ability to remove them. Any idea about that assessment?
Very quick reaction to that. I think, look, so much of this is psychological. If those captains of those tankers feel that they're not going to get Iranian drones and missiles coming their way, they might take their chances in terms of the mines. So much of this is about not feeling that Iran's going to attack them. So once the Iranians on paper say they're not, I think that's going to remove a lot of the sort of essentially the reservations you have away. But very quickly on the point of the long term and the short term. Look, in the short term, the United States president has said, no Iranian nuclear weapon. That's something you can negotiate around, because the Iranians, at least officially, are saying they're not interested in a nuclear weapon. They want the right to enrich uranium, but not a weapon. But that's a long-term, agenda that you have to pursue. That's not going to be done in Islamabad. I mean, if you go back to 2015, the last time U.S. and Iran actually made a successful nuclear agreement, first it began with a temporary agreement, 6 months. Both of them decided to do certain things to please the other side. But it took a year and a half to actually get to a point where they had an agreement. So Islamabad, the very best it can achieve is to agree on a framework. What are we going to talk about? To your point, they don't really know right now what they're going to talk about. They're going to narrow it down. They're going to drop the maximalist demands if they want diplomacy to work.
But John Bolton thinks it's a mistake for the vice president, J.D. Vance, to be the one who's spearheading these talks. You mentioned the idea of the high-ranking nature of who is going to be in Islamabad being very impactful in the conversations. Bolton thinks it should be Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Does the U.S. gain or lose by having Vance lead it?
Well, it's clear the president almost called out J.D. Vance multiple times in the last few weeks, saying he knows J.D. doesn't really support this war. So the Iranians think they have an advantage with having J.D.
But he's
Vance.
falling in line.
He is falling in line, but Marco Rubio would be the person to say, look, if it's going to happen, if you really want to worry about the war, I'm going to bring it to bear and really put pressure on them. If the goal is to force a good deal for the United States, you want the most hawkish person in the room there. That's almost certainly in this administration, Marco Rubio. The person that isn't is J.D. Vance.